Hi, this is Wayne Hall back again with a great book that you can order through your local shop. That's an indie book. And I have a great one for you this week. This time I actually don't have a physical copy of this. I actually have digital copies of this one, but I'm ordering this book right here. It's called Once and Future, and it's described this way. Let me read the description to you. When a group of nationalists use an ancient artifact to bring a villain from Arthurian myth back from the dead to gain power, retired monster hunter Bridget McGuire pulls her unsuspecting grandson Duncan, a museum curator, into a world of magic and mysticism to combat the deadly secrets of England's past that threaten its very future. It's a really interesting book. It has to do with Arthurian legend, which I'm always fascinated by. I'm sure some of you may remember Camelot 3000, which came up from DC a while back. It was about the Arthurian group that had now translated into the year 3000. This is set in the current times, and unfortunately for Bridget and Duncan, the folks from Arthur's Round Table are not necessarily as good as they used to be. We get to see Merlin, we get to see Arthur, we get to see all these other people, and it's a really romping adventure as far as things go with the various characters. I should mention Bridget is a rather old character, which is unusual in comics. Usually, characters, Bridget McGuire, usually people are much younger. Now, Duncan, of course, is. He appears to be 20 or 30 as a museum curator. But Bridget is a senior, kind of about my age or older, and she has been devoting her life to this whole business about the Arthurian legends. There's a lot of action going on, a lot of things. We have Beowulf gets involved. We get all kinds of crazy and amazing action things happening to them. There's a girlfriend involved for Duncan, and she's getting pulled into this as well. It's I don't want to spoil too much because what's happening is these are getting to be quite a bit of of struggle happening, and this is all, of course, based in England, which is a natural place for it. The writer is a guy by the name of Kieran Gillen, and I'm probably spelling it, it's tough to spell. It's tough to pronounce too. I may be butchering that. And the artist is Dan Mora, who used to do Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and is also good for the book Klaus that Grant Morrison does from Boom Studios as well. It's interesting things about the complicated truths of the history of England, the power of family to save the day, especially if that family has secret bunkers of ancient weapons and decades of experience hunting the greatest monsters in Britain's history. So there's a lot of really interesting things happening in this book. Um, because I'm part English. I always like to say I'm three parts English and one part Scotch, sort of like a bad drink. And because of that, I'm always fascinated by British things and what happens over there. It's just a well done book. I think it's up to about issue number 13 right now. How I get the digital copies, I don't buy them through Comixology. What I do is, as a reviewer, I'm connected into certain groups that want their books to be reviewed. And so, what they'll often do is they'll send out digital copies. And they have what's called watermarks on them. And that's to make sure you don't print them out or somehow try to print copies and make money yourself off of it. And I have been reading that book very regularly ever since the first issue. And there's a group that I belong to, and because we're reviewers, the head of the group sends out a zip file that contains a lot of these books, and that's usually in there, the ones in future. And the bad news too for me is I'd like to write a review of this book, but the website that I largely write for, majorspoilers.com, somebody or somebody's always beats me to the punch when it comes to reviewing this book. So I'm out on the outside. I can just say it's a great book. The art's interesting. It's a little craggy. The characters are well developed. like I said, there's this interesting mix of a grandmother, sort of, and the museum curator and his girlfriend. And it just goes really quickly. Things happen along. Beowulf, like I said, is involved recently. I'm trying not to spoil too much because, that first trade is now out, and you can get it through Amazon. I know you can order it through your local shops. Boom Studios is not one of the main three, so it's one of those ones that local shops really can kind of can get you, as well as the local issues, as they come out, the individual issues. So I would say if you really like Arthurian legend, like I do, and you like to see how crazy things go on in today's world, and how sometimes the past isn't quite as good as we think it is. When these characters come back, they are quite nasty. Again, Merlin's involved, and other parts of the legend I'm less familiar with. And I'm trying really hard not to spoil this, but it's really something. But why don't we go ahead and get to the gradings, and that'll help me since I won't have to spoil too much. As far as the writing goes, I really like the writing. It's, Arthurian legend is something that interests me, so I'm not surprised that I find the writing really engaging. The characters are interesting, and there are people around the older lady that kind of help her, and they're interesting as well. So there's a lot of good characters. Like I said, there's a lot of fast-moving things happening, which is good and easy to read. So I'd have to give the writing an A. I think the writing is very good. The art, like I said, it's craggy. It's kind of interesting. I mean, you can see by the cover here that it's pretty interesting. You see the two main characters on the sword, and that person. We won't go into that, but there's the artwork's pretty good. I would like it to be a little less craggy, and I understand you're dealing with monsters and mythical things and all that, and so people probably want you to be craggy when you do that stuff, or a little sketchier. I'd like it if it was a little less craggy, so I'd have to give the artwork a B, I think, as far as that goes. Literary merit. This is where this book is going to shine because, Arthurian legend, and it couldn't be more literary than that. And they are doing a wonderful job of of filling in the gaps as to what's happened to the characters, let's say, since the legends were developed. More than that I won't say because it's got some really good stuff. But I have to say, as far as filling in and making this true to the original Arthurian legends, it's pretty good. Because it's set in modern times, it may not be something that's going to hold up over decades, but it's good now. I would read it now. It's a very good book. So, as far as his lettering, I always am critical of lettering, but this one I'll just give a B, and I think it's probably as good as they can do as far as that goes. But it's an interesting thing to me. I always butcher letters. I just don't think that they do it quite well. But oh well. The fun factor, the main character, the senior lady is. She has a very odd sense of humor, as some British folks do. She always says things that can be taken multiple ways, and it's very dark and unhappy the way she looks at things. So there is a fun factor, but like I said, it's not what I would consider. This is in no way a kid's book. Let me say that. But on the other hand, it's not too far an adult book. But there's a lot of really good things going on as far as that goes. The fun factor, I'd give it a B minus. If you go for the dark humor of it, yeah, you'll probably like it. Overall grade, as a book that's out now, and it's an issue just coming out this week, it's a very good book. I would have to give this an A to A minus because the art influences me a little bit. But you can get Once and Future in your comic shop. Yes, you can. And if you like this kind of stuff, I'm guaranteed this is going to be a favorite of yours. When I see that I have a new issue in my little zip file, that's the first thing I go to and open up because it's just one of those great books. The first trade's out. Second trade's probably not far away. So I would say get Once and Future at your local shop. And keep reading your comics.